You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to the Fezcast, another edition, and this time we've got the gruesome threesome in. It's me, Matt and Barry, so the home of discontent. Well, actually we best start off here, aren't we, Matt and Barry, because Matt, you had a bit of a not a to and fro, were you, but you picked up on a little bit of flack as it were coming our way. Apparently in the aftermath of the Bath game we weren't critical enough. Is that right, Matt?
That sounds like it. I mean, to be honest, I've not actually listened to what you and Duncan said. I've sort of banished the entire existence of the Bath game from all memory, so I've not even bothered with that. So yeah, I think a few people potentially sometimes see the effort to find the bright side in utter rubbish as maybe not being critical enough. But you know, everyone's different.
Well, I think the problem here is we're fans, aren't we? And as was pointed out back last season, I had the temerity to suggest that Owen Farrell wasn't having the best season. And, you know, this week, is it the Quip or one of the papers in France that turned out and told the world that he's the flop of the season over in France, which is an interesting viewpoint, considering he's only played about 2 games. But I suppose us plugging him on knowing full well that he's perhaps injury prone wasn't bad business after all, was it, Barry? But, you know, you don't want to be Arsenal TV, do we, Barry?
No, absolutely not. I mean, this podcast is it's got 6 or 7, I think, regular contributors, and it reflects our views, our individual views. There's no editorial line, and anyone else who wants to get involved is more than welcome to drop us an email on fezcast.ssa@outlook.com, and we'll happily read out any feedback or suggestions.
Indeed, absolutely. Well, look, you know, we got that one out of the way quick. That was a little bit of a scratch I had to itch, as it were. But moving on, we could be a little bit critical, I think, because the first thing we're going to talk about in part one is the second game of the weekend, Saracens women at Northampton, after a pretty fantastic game of rugby between Northampton and Bath, going down to Loughborough Lightning. And I'm going to throw some criticism out here, and you guys can tell me whether this is justified or not. But I saw Alex Osterbury, the head coach's comments before the game, and he basically said, you know, Loughborough are the team that could cause a few problems to the top 5 teams this season. And it was almost as if it was, you know, careful what you wish for. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy almost, Matt.
Well, yeah, he wasn't wrong, was he?
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, look, I a couple of weeks ago on the show, I did sort of highlight the fact that you've got the top five chasing the top 4. Work that one out, and the bottom 4 in the league, and it's very, very split. And up until this weekend, no one in that bottom 4 had beaten anyone in the top 5. But I think you look at Loughborough's the players that Loughborough have got in their team, and you go, well, they are the ones that were always going to be the biggest banana skin to teams. And actually, Harlequins almost got beaten by Trailfinders as well recently. So, you know, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. But yeah, I do look at Alex Osterbury saying that pre-match. I think it's almost right, you know, to say, you know, don't just assume that we're going to turn up and beat these teams in the bottom 4. And he'll have said that to the team, surely. But yeah, it is a little bit. I'm going a bit too Alanis Morissette because it's not ironic at all. But you know, it almost became a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, like I said. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big issue, isn't it? I think that like we're trying to strike a balance and everything. How do you strike a balance of not going in overconfident, paying respect to the opposition? Loughborough are a good side. They've got some really good players there. And last year, at Northampton when they played last year. The game I went to where we interviewed Leanne Infante after the game. Loughborough ran Saracens very close, and I think there's an issue there that at the end of this season, I think the big problem is that getting a home semi-final now is looking increasingly difficult, Barry. Exeter and Gloucester are winning games and look almost like, even now with still some games to play, that those top two positions are kind of almost beginning to get nailed on. I'm not saying that things can't change. There are still games that could change it. But if those top two teams, I don't fancy any side going to Gloucester or Exeter and winning in a semi-final, Barry.
No, it's going to be very, very difficult, and we really could do with a home semi-final. Having said that, if there's one club that could do it, it's going to be Saracens. But I mean, we're almost into the stage of every match between now and the end of the season is a cup final and a must-win game, really, and that puts a lot of pressure on. But I'm sure the girls will respond to that pressure in the right way.
Well, I hope so. And I mean, again, as we spoke about last week, me and Duncan, when talking about the taking all 10 wickets for just 68 runs when the Saracens then played Bath, you want to see effort. And, I think we did see effort from the Saracens women. I mean, there was atrocious conditions, which, it's same for both sides. But when Saracens were attacking and having more of the ball, it gives you more opportunity to drop balls, make mistakes, whatever, in bad conditions, doesn't it, Matt?
It does, yeah. We can say the conditions played a part, but they've played a part in games that we've won as well. So, yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be making any excuses like that. And yeah, Barry's right. It's every game is a cup final. We certainly need to win our remaining 5 games, and we probably need a bonus point in all of them. And that starts with playing Leicester next week, which is, I suppose, it's probably the game you want. Leicester at home after a bit of a setback. It's the one that it is so far the easiest fixture of the season. So nothing less than a 5-point win is going to be what we need. And if we get any less than that, then yeah, game over. But our run into the end of the season is still easier, in inverted commas, than everyone else around us, to be honest. So teams will be dropping points. Everyone does play each other. We've got to beat Quins, we've got to beat Exeter, but there is still a shot at that home semi-final. But yeah, 5 wins.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully this game is the kick on the backside that's the guys need to kick on. Shall I have a break there, and then we'll come back and discuss a pretty major win against Bristol Bears on the weekend in part 2.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You are listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracen Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to the second part of tonight's Fezcast, or today's Fezcast, and time to discuss the big match at Stonex on Saturday, which was a taming of the Bears. I suppose done the double over them. And I think, first thing to say, Barry, it was really important that we got back up on that winning horse, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We would have asked for a reaction, and I think we got one. The effort, the spirit, and the energy that the lads put out there at the weekend was second to none, and it was. We'll discuss the game in more length in a bit, I'm sure, but I never quite felt comfortable, but I never felt that we were really in that much danger of losing that game.
No, I don't think so. And also, I think, Matt, what it does is it highlights some of the criticism of the Bath game, or particularly the selection for the Bath game, where the likes of Tom Willis and Nick Tompkins were rested, had a week off, came back, and actually the pair of them played exceptionally well again, didn't they? And proved that, as we often say, in Smalley we trust. I think they got it right. They accepted that perhaps Bath wasn't going to be a game to throw all of your weaponry at it. Sometimes discretion is the better part of valour.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, with the Bath game, I think a lot of people didn't quite gather who was injured, who was rested, who wasn't. So I think there are a few people whinging about certain players being missing in that game when they were never actually available. I mean, you mentioned Nick Tompkins. He was one that was rested. But we've been saying for about 3 years he could do with a break. Yeah. So, I don't really know what people want in that regard. At some point, Maro Itoje needs to have a week off. And we're all going to moan about it. It's just the fact of what rugby is at the moment. But yeah, I think we got it right against Bristol. I think it was one of those performances where actually, if we'd have lost, I still wouldn't have gone away that disappointed, because you'd have still seen such a big improvement, such a big difference from the Bath game. Obviously, would be disappointed to lose, but yeah, it was just that confidence to bounce back and actually be trying quite a few new things in the Bristol game. In fact, one set play from a line out, which was Bristol never clocked it. I think 3 or 4 times in the first half. We did exactly the same thing, and it led to 2 tries, I think. And never really seen it from us before. So yeah, I can't really argue. It's a shame about last week, but this week was great.
Yeah, the interesting thing that you say about Maro Itoje needing a rest. I mean, of course, Maro in pretty much every game he plays now gets 10 minutes on the sideline, peddling the exercise bike, doesn't he? Barry, is that becoming a problem?
I believe that's his 8th yellow card this season, if I remember that correctly. Yes, it is. I felt he was a bit unlucky on Saturday. I actually. Hands up, I had to go to the toilet, and I had so many layers on it. It took me about half an hour to come back. And by the time I came back, the clock had moved on about 2 minutes. And I sat down and said to the bloke I sit next to, I haven't missed much. He said, "Oh, Itoje's in the bin." I said, "What?" And I watched it back on the telly on Sunday, and I can't really work out the what was behind it. I mean, the referee said there was three penalties in quick succession against him, but he only ever signalled 2, so I'm not sure where the third one came from, but it seemed a bit harsh to me, that one.
Well, I think from my point of view, and I know Matt plays a little game at the moment where he doesn't look at his phone during the game and then puts a little bet on with himself, at which point I'll have sent a message on WhatsApp moaning about the referee. And you got it bob on this week, didn't you, Matt?
I did, yeah, but it's honest, it was a pretty obvious one, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, I think my biggest problem was, and I'm going to have a little bit of a gripe about refereeing over the last couple of weeks, and not only in our game but also in other games I've seen, is that it's consistency again. So in the first half, Saracens gave away 4 penalties, of which Maro probably gave away 3 of them, 75% of them. Now, fair dues. If the referee's seen him being the constant offender, I haven't got a problem with a yellow card being seen there. But Bristol had given away double the amount of penalties that Maro Itoje had given away in their own 22, and there hadn't been a warning. Now, for me, you've got to play an even consistency. And then it comes back to different interpretations. So the week before, we see Toby Knight getting red carded, which has now been ratified. He's got a 3-match ban, 2 matches if he does the naughty boy course, whatever it may be. But in the Bath-Northampton game, we saw Alex Mitchell get a yellow card for something that wasn't that much different, I did think. Okay, Ollie Lawrence made a bit more of it than perhaps he should have done and has apologised for it. But Sam Underhill put one in on, I think it was on Finn Smith, that was a penalty only. And I started thinking, that was no different to Toby Knight. So this inconsistency is beginning to annoy me a little bit. And at the moment, we seem to have been on the back end of it. And I know in the future we'll probably be on the right side of it, but at the moment we seem to be a little bit on the back side of it.
It's. I mean, to be honest, Toby Knight's red card, I did sort of sit and read the detail that Saracens provided to try and get him off of it, basically. And the response from the RFU is just no. Like there's no real explanation for why, what's been written down hasn't been considered at all. I mean, it even says in the disciplinary proceedings that he made an effort to bend. He hinged at the hips. He was practically horizontal. The player running into him had lowered as well. But then it just goes, we didn't find any mitigation. So what's the threshold? No one really knows. So
I know what the threshold in that situation was. It's Carl Dixon, and Carl Dixon gets a lot of criticism, justifiably. And I think the RFU just protected him. They know he got it wrong, but they're not going to throw him under a bus because he's the one referee who probably needs to do some brushing up on their refereeing skills. My personal view. Matt Carley has his moments, but on the whole, I thought Matt Carley refereed the game pretty well. It's just that consistency. I want to see that improved, Barry.
There was a point in the game on Saturday when it seemed like everything we did was a penalty against us, and Carley was getting a bit of stick from the crowd as well. I mean, there's odd things I could argue about his decisions, having watched it back on telly, and I don't really get some of them. But just to go back to that Toby Knight one, I couldn't see a great deal of arms involved in that, so I think that's probably where it fell down. But then I couldn't see a great deal of arms involved in the Alex Mitchell one on Sunday either. So yeah, you're right. Consistency is what we'd like, but are you ever really going to get that when we're talking about human beings? I don't know.
True. I mean, very true. That is a very good point. Well, shall we move on and point out it was a bonus point win, and it was an exceptionally good game, I felt. And even for the neutral, neutral have enjoyed it, Matt. But I want to pull out two people in this. And the first person I'm going to pull out is somebody who's been mentioned before. And I can't remember who made the comment about him being one of those players like Alec Cleary, who you used to worry a little bit about them coming on as a substitute. Harry Wilson, inexperienced young player, come from Doncaster, a big step up in quality. He's been called on with Hugh Tizard out, Theo McFarland out, whatever, to start at second row. And I thought he had an exceptional game, including a lovely little offload that led to Cinty's try in the corner. I mean, a fantastic performance from him, wasn't it, Matt?
It was, yeah. He's the sort of player that I really like. He just getting on with the basics, no nonsense. You don't really see him too much, but yeah. But by all accounts, he's very highly regarded among the squad. And yeah, he certainly showed on Saturday that it was. He's making the step up brilliantly. I thought he had a fantastic game. It was someone that I sit at matches with my dad, and he went, "Oh God, we're desperately short in the second row. Is he going to be our weak link?" And actually, he really wasn't. Him and Marrow between them, although Marrow did pick up the yellow card, made a huge difference probably at the breakdown, which is what led to us being able to play a much faster paced game than we have done in the last 3 or 4 weeks or so. So yeah, brilliant, really.
I mean, I think that's the thing about Murray when you talk about the breakdown and why he gets a lot of yellows is he's one of those players that goes past the limit to find out where the limit is and takes risks at the breakdown that sometimes come off and at the moment isn't coming off. But I think it probably doesn't help that he's a very recognisable chap, isn't he, at the end of the day? I mean, you don't get to be 6'7" and and be as famous as Maro Itoje, the Marks and Spencer's adverts and model and all of this. I mean, he does get noticed when you go in. And I mean, he can only make it worse by wearing lurid green boots or something, I think, or just about finish off. I always remember players turning up when I used to play, and they'd have these brand new blue boots on there. You sit there with your black boots on, when I go in and do the soft shoe shuffle or somebody's back, they ain't going to notice me doing it. So, I mean, I do think Maro's a bit unlucky there. However, what I will say about Maro Itoje, I mean, he did supply the highlight of the season, I think, with his telegraphed dummy off the back of a 50-yard run after reading a tip pass from Ellis Gibbs, who I thought had an absolutely atrocious game. But if he's in the England Six Nations starting lineup, Borthwick really does need to have a word with him. So, yeah, that's a bit later on, I think. But yeah, he needed to put that big run in, and then the ball gets out to Tom Willis, who just, does Tom Willis things. But that whole try, I felt, was made by one player, and one player who, if Fergus Burke hadn't been given man of the match on the day, should have got man of the match, I think. I think he made something like 25 tackles with him. It was a ridiculous amount of work. Juan Martin Gonzalez kept that move alive through sheer determination. When Ivan Van Zyl tried shipping out and it got a bit wobbly and everything, he had a couple of Bears players around him, and he got there, won that ball, and kept it alive so that he could get out to Fergus. He put it out to Tom, who was out there seagunning. There's all good number 8s to score a try in the corner. I mean, fantastic stuff, Barry.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great try. I think both Tom and Maro were probably very, very happy it was the last play of the first half, because they could go off and sit in an oxygen tent for 5 or 10 minutes and try and get some air back in their lungs. But yeah, I mean, JMG was brilliant. It was actually 26 tackles I think he made on the day, which is some work rate. But I've got to say, as good as his work was for that particular try, he was very lucky the Bristol players didn't realise there were no offside lines, because if they had, they could have just dived on that ball and killed it stone dead.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, it's about having a player with the more intelligence than the other players around him, Matt, and JMG for all his youth. Because don't forget, he's still a young guy. Really, he's not a 32-year-old long in the tooth warhorse, is he? He's a young guy, still, developing his game in the Premiership, as it were, and he just showed that little bit. The old famous Clive Wood top hints, wasn't it, Matt?
It was, yeah. I mean, it was quite a fun sight, really, sort of seeing Harry Randall almost do a full 360 around the ball without knowing he could pick it up. But, yeah, I mean, there's so many other players we could name in the game as well. You mentioned Tom Willis. From my seat, I didn't actually realise how much work he still had to do for that try. To me, it was about 10 metres out, but obviously you have your view shortened when you're sitting front on from it. He was well outside the 22. But you mentioned Fergus Burke. We do need to talk about Fergus Burke as well, but not just him as an individual, but the slightly changed way of bringing him into the game, having him almost more often than not, actually, not as first receiver.
Yeah. Well, I think a big thing needs to be put out for a player that we've mentioned before, which is Nick Tompkins. And if you think that Nick Tompkins has played the entirety of his career outside very similar 10s, either at Saracens outside Owen Farrell, or for Wales outside Dan Bigger for the most part of it, who are pretty similar 10s in the way that they play, they'll take it to the line and then be looking to be putting players at pace into gaps. Nick suddenly had to step up with a different type of standoff, and very quickly has developed that side of his game that we didn't really know was there for the last 10 years, Barry.
Yeah, I mean, it's been vastly different for not only for Nick, but also, I mean, for Fergus. Fergus has come halfway around the world to play in a league he's probably never seen before, except the odd game on television, and uprooted, whatever family or whatever he's got, and change hemispheres and everything else. And it was always going to take time for him to bed in. And add on to that as well, the fact of who he was replacing at Saracens and how much affection and how much the team had been built around Owen. It was always going to take a while for him to gel. And then he got an injury in the middle of it as well. But yeah, he's definitely looking the part now, and long may it continue. Another couple of games like that, and I think he'll be a fan's favourite.
I think he will do. Indeed, looking at some of the 3-word reviews, I'll pick up the one from Jimbo, who said some attacking creativity, which has been something that has been a criticism that's been levelled in recent weeks, hasn't it, Matt? But yeah, we saw some great creativity. I think the one that somebody picked up, I think Brian O'Driscoll picked up on commentary, if he watched it back, was Fergus's first try, where Jamie George made a run on a soft shoulder of the young lad playing fly half, who I did feel really sorry for, because he was hiked off unceremoniously at the 50-minute mark, as if to say, well, it's all your fault, mate, which is got to be a terrible hit to his confidence, because I don't think he was getting any support from outside him. And for all those people who can't wait for Bernard Panzer von Rensburg, the 15th of Bloemfontein, or whatever his name is, he's got one of those weird South Africans. He thinks he'll walk straight into outside centre for England when he qualifies. I think Alex Lozowski showed him how to play the game, didn't he?
He did, yeah. Loz is another one that's just chugging along, ultra reliable this season. Fantastic, really. But the attacking creativity side, I definitely agree that we've had games. Obviously, the Newcastle game's an obvious one, where we just looked incredibly static in attack. But a lot of it does, you don't just entirely blame the backs. A lot of it does come from the breakdown being. Sometimes this season it's been really, really slow getting the ball out, and that's because we've been second best at the breakdown. Ivan van Zyl was able to pick up a ball as soon as he arrived at it.
Yeah, it makes it so much
easier.
It was hugely quick, and I think Nigel Ridpath has pointed out that defence wins games, doesn't it? Which is an interesting one. Quite interesting. Well, Steve Cummins is a man not known for his inability to count, and he's got 3-word reviews. First off, potty mouth Jamie. Yes, naughty Mr. George. You really should, after 300 games, and we'll say congratulations to Jamie on that milestone. But yeah, I mean, as much as Matt Carley can frustrate the living daylights out of people, you've got to keep that one under control. And I think Marrow being told, I think that was another thing that I think that was it David Flatman on commentary turned around and said he loved the way that he goes from Jamie to 2. But that player, if he swears again, he's leaving the pitch. Was quite an explanation of the. A bit like sending an email, isn't it? Instead of saying kind regards, saying regards. You really upset someone there. That player will leave the pitch. He also said better Willis brother, which I'm not sure. I mean, if you have both the Willises, I mean that's an obscene amount of talent in just one family. But he has also said back on track, which is true. The other one I wanted to pick up, though, is Oliver Archer's got 2 3-word reviews. He said, New Year treat. Yes, indeed, it was. But frustrating last quarter. He's put in brackets again. And I think that's an important thing to pick up on, Barry, isn't it? The fact that, again, and I will say, I'll have a bit of a whinge again about Mr. Cardi. He did his normal thing of letting a team back into it. And we started giving away penalties because Bristol started throwing the ball around. I think the third try, the one the big Fijian scored in the corner, firstly, I didn't think it was a penalty. I think whoever got there, and I can't remember who it was penalised on the ball cleanly the penalty should have been for them. And then Harry Randall took the quick tap about 15 foot from where the mark was, which is a little bit of a bit slight annoyance. But yeah, it's a bit worrying that we let them back in to score that bonus point try, isn't it, Barry?
Yeah, it was a little bit annoying, and I mean we can discuss the tactic at the end of trying to keep the ball and whether that was a mistake. I mean, the way the game had been going in the last 20 minutes, you kind of felt that it probably wasn't with hindsight, we got it wrong, but it probably wasn't a bad idea to try and play out the clock. But I think Bristol definitely got better when they replaced Worsley with Byrne at 10, and I think they looked more dangerous from that moment. And their replacement winger, Ravovo, he was a really tricky player to tackle. You could see it in the movement he's got, and he was another one of these sort of all arms and all legs, and where on earth you tackle a player like that, I just don't know. And he seemed to, well, he frightened the life out of me, and mind the players. But it was a frustrating last quarter. But looking at the two teams and looking at the benches and what was likely to happen over the course of the game, you could kind of see that coming. And I'm glad we were just about far enough in front to hang on at the end.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's one of the, at the end of the day, 5 points is 5 points. In this league, teams are looking at getting bonus points for either 4 tries or losing bonus points. I think what was good was we stopped them getting a losing bonus point, and a couple of occasions when we took penalty kicks, where perhaps people would have thought, well, let's go for the corner. That paid dividends in that side of the game, didn't it, Matt? The decision to take those 2 penalties that essentially made the difference between Bristol getting 2 bonus points and the 1 bonus point they did.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we took a penalty when I think we were 13 points ahead, and you think, well, yeah, you get more than 2 scores ahead, fair enough. And if you go on to score more tries, you go on to score more tries. At the end of the day, we already had 4 ourselves. You just keep ticking the points up. Yes, I've got no issue with that whatsoever. And yeah, I agree with Barry. I sort of looked at Bristol's bench, mainly sort of seeing Ravovo on it and thinking, I really hope they don't bring him on any earlier than about 78 minutes. We'd have been in trouble. And so I kind of saw the game going the way it did in that last 20. Fair play to, there were some tired bodies out there. And you could see in the substitutions that we were making, they just had to be made. I don't think Mark McCall necessarily wanted to bring on some of the players we had on the bench, and that's no disrespect to them, but it was just necessary to freshen things up a little bit.
Indeed, yeah. Jamie George going almost the full 80 minutes, which, the poor old boy's getting on a bit now. He used to be able to do that 3-4 years ago without any issues whatsoever. Now I think it looks a little bit more difficult. Now, next we've got Munster, but before we do that, Six Nations is on its way up, and I just want to scratch your brains. Let's think we are now Steve Borthwick and Richard Wigglesworth and the rest of the England management team. Who at Saracens are you looking at, and who potentially could go to the Six Nations squad? We know Jamie George is going to be there. He's England captain. We know Maro Itoje is going to be there. I mean, that's just a given. They're the 2 of the first names down on the team sheet. We've been saying for a long, long time that Tom Willis and Alex Lozowski should be there. And, if you're picking on form, then, there's no reason why you don't pick Tom Willis. I mean, if Borthwick doesn't, then, Tom's obviously weed on his cornflakes or something, hasn't he, at some point in the future? Or Alex Donbrand seriously has got some real knock on Borthwick. I'm going to throw 2 names out there, though, and see whether it goes up the flagpole and you salute it. As a bolter, first off, in the wing position, given that Femi Wasibi, I can never say his name right, and I apologise to it unreservedly, but the lad at Exeter Chiefs is out injured at the moment, isn't he? You want a player similar to him, who does the same sort of similar things to him. I don't think Rotimi Shegan is doing himself any harm at the moment. And if he was to be brought into the Six Nations squad, it wouldn't be so much as a bolter as it would have been at the start of the season.
I think the only reason Rotimi Shegan does himself harm is when his hamstring goes ping. Otherwise, he'd probably would have been playing for England by now. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. He is a similar player to Faye Wasabi, as Duncan would call him. And yeah, I could see him as a bit of a bolter for England. But the wing position is probably one of England's strongest. I think you could pick a lot of different players with different skills in the wing position for England. So I'm not sure I can see Shegan there. But yeah, if he was picked, you'd say he deserves it for sure.
Well, indeed. I mean, you look at what wingers we've got, and presumably what Borthwick favours as wingers is he likes quite big, strong guys. But with Richard Wigglesworth as your attack coach, there's going to be an awful lot of box kicking. And I think, despite the fact that Shegan is one of the smaller wingers, he's exceptional under the high ball, isn't he, Barry?
Yeah, he's exceptional on defence as well. I've never seen a winger who quite as much as Shegan enjoys a tackle and also looks like he's quite capable of bouncing back onto his feet, getting over the ball and winning it. And he has done on a couple of occasions this season. There's not really much missing from his game. The only slight criticism I've got of him is he does tend to keep the ball a little bit. And I think occasionally he'd be better off putting a little chip in over the last defender and making players turn and then using that defensive ability. And I think that's the only thing missing from his game for me. But he definitely would look out of place in the international stage.
Now, the other player we've mentioned, Matt, and we mentioned him on our WhatsApp group this morning when we were discussing things, is our number 10, Fergus Burke, who has an English mother, qualifies for England. He's one of the form 10s in the country. Now, he won't get picked ahead of Marcus Smith, because Finn Smith won't get picked ahead of Marcus Smith, even though I think Finn Smith's a better 10. Is Fergus Burke someone that Steve Borthwick should be looking at?
Not this year. No, I think give him a full season playing domestic rugby. If his form of the last week continues for a little while, then yeah, maybe we'll talk about it. But no, I think it's far too early for Fergus Burke, and I think mainly because you've got the two Smiths. George Ford will still be around, he will. But also, if you've got the likes of Alex Lazowski, Henry Slade, there are people in there that can cover 10 if needed over the course of the Six Nations anyway. So yeah, I think it's a bit early, but it will be very interesting to see what Fergus Burke's long-term plan is. Obviously, he could go back to New Zealand and try and play for New Zealand, but that race may have been run. He could play for England and he could play for Scotland. And you'd argue that he's not going to be. It's going to take a hell of a lot to be the main man at 10 for either of those nations. So yeah, we'll have to see what he wants to do, really.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there may well be people watching down in New Zealand who might be interested as well. You never know. But need to finish up and chat about the game coming up, because European rugby starts again, doesn't it? I get confused as to, is it 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off or something like that? It's like, like a shift system that the Europeans going. But we're away in Ireland against Munster on the weekend. And, what do you want to see from that game, Barry? What do you expect from us? What would be a good result?
A good result. It's really difficult to know. I made this comment a couple of weeks ago talking to a friend of mine. Looking at the block of fixtures that we've got, I'd not be surprised if we picked, should we say, if we rotated players out for the away games that we've got. So obviously, you've got Bath in there, you've got Munster in there, and you've got Exeter in there. I mean, we're going to lose players for Exeter anyway because of the England, the training squad for the Six Nations. I'd not be surprised to see us rotate a few players on Saturday and concentrate on winning the home game against Castres the following week. I think if we can get anything at all out in Munster, it's going to be a bonus for me, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Matt, for you?
Yeah, I think on the face of it, I probably would. Although Munster aren't having the best of seasons, I don't think. Well, they certainly weren't at the start of the season. Now they've picked up a little bit for now. So I think we should be looking to get something out of the game. And let's be perfectly honest. At a time when everyone in rugby needs some money, some home knockout fixtures is very, very important. So I think we do need to be going pretty full tilt in both of these games to try and finish top of our group, which obviously the bizarre way that the system works, we could win all of our games quite handsomely and still finish second. Just the way it is, unfortunately. But yeah, I'd like us to go strong to Munster and try and nick a win, and then get 5 points against Castres and put us as high in the seeds as we possibly can. Get some knockout rugby.
Yeah, I agree with that. It would be good to see that. And bearing in mind that you're going to have some players that are going to be not rested, but off on international duty, which is something I know you wanted to pick up on. The whole omni-shambles, I nearly swore then, Barry, but the complete and utter rickets that we've made of this season, that you only play 18 matches and yet you can still have players off at Fenny Hill Park, whatever it's called, holding tackle bags for Steve Borthwick's England training squad.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the fact that in the last conversation we had, you've just about tried to give everyone away to England, including some people who may not even qualify yet. That if we're going to lose players again, and we are going to lose an awful lot of players. I mean, no one's mentioned Ben Earl. He's going to be disappearing off as well. But I mean, you look at the ridiculousness of the autumn internationals. We lost Alex Wazowski for that last game before them. He went and basically, well, I don't know what he did. He might have been sweeping up the changing rooms for all I know. He never got anywhere near the pitch for England, and it does seem frustrating that we have to lose players who may or may not get a game in all that time, and we're punished for it. I mean, obviously other clubs are punished as well. It's not just about us, but perhaps it's time to look and look at it and say you can only take a certain number of players from any one team, particularly the week before. Other than that, it does seem unfair. I mean, at this, I'm actually just booked up to go to Exeter, so I'm going to take my boots just in case I get a game.
Well, yeah, I mean, pick me up on the way down, Barry. I mean, my boots are always dubbed, ready to go, you know. All right, I can't promise you I'll be able to do Tom Willisey things. I mean, actually a lot slower, but I mean, but yeah, you know, I mean, that's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, yeah, I mean, the only other thing is again, and as Duncan will often say, turkeys and Christmas and everything like that, is to look at when the Six Nations is played, and why isn't the Six Nations perhaps played at the end of the season now? I mean, yes, tradition's tradition, isn't it? But if you've got a smaller leagues across the competitions as well, and I suppose, you know, you do have to speak to the French, the Italians, the Irish, whatever, but surely there's a way that we could perhaps play it a little bit later so that we could get our league season more complete before the Six Nations start. I don't know. I mean, again, you know, it takes a lot of conjoined thinking, which I'm not sure is entirely possible with the way that the game's set up in either domestically or internationally, Matt.
No, you're probably right there. I'm probably in a bit of a minority that I don't really mind it, the odd game when that happens. I'll go back to finances again, but every club is compensated relatively handsomely when it does happen, so it's not a huge issue. And you've got to remember as well that quite a few of our players now are actually paid by England in a certain amount, so can't really argue with it. But yeah, I don't know what the answer is, to be honest. I'm not sure I'd want the Six Nations played at the end of the season, because that sort of stops you playing the Southern Hemisphere teams as much over our summer. But I don't know. It is what it is. We'll just have to play a more expanded Prem Cup or something just to fill some gaps. I don't know.
Maybes. Now, last thing I wanted to say before we finish, we did mention him last week because he's off to Japan, putting some yen in his pocket. But you wanted to bring up Tom Parton again, didn't you, Barry?
Yeah, it's just from my point of view, it's a great shame to see him go. I mean, he kind of, when he was playing last season, I thought he was here for a good while. He certainly seemed to be improving the longer he had, and it's just a shame to see him go, particularly mid-season as well, because all joking aside, we are struggling for numbers at the moment. I mean, we've got so many injuries. I think anecdotally, it looks like McFarlane's out for about 12 weeks. So, you know, not the same position, obviously, but we are, you know, Alex Good's out, and if Elliot Daly goes to England as well, we could well be struggling for numbers over the next few weeks. And it was just a shame to see him go in the middle of the season. But obviously, he's been offered a few quid, and good luck to him.
Yeah, of course. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time, and everybody in podcast land, thank you for your time as well, listening in to our witterings, and hopefully we've got the balance exactly right this show. But yeah, thanks to Matt, thanks to Barry, and thanks to everybody else. We'll see you next week, which will be on the 15th, I think it is, something like that. Yeah, 15th. That'll be Wednesday. I'll have been at West Ham Fulham the night before, so you know, we'll record it before I see West Ham Fulham. I'll probably be at a pretty. The Saracens fans are hard. You try being a West Ham fan. I said, what's that? Is it the four stages of of pain is stepping on Lego, giving birth, getting kicked in the nads, or supporting West Ham. And really moaning about what Saracens are doing at the moment. I'm being in mind for the football's on. It's not a pretty place at the moment. But yeah, no, thank you for everybody for listening in, and we'll see you next week for another edition of the Fezcast.
We'll have to get John on for the West Ham versus Spurs game, and you two can cry at each other for hours.
Yeah, that wouldn't be pretty, I don't think.
We know where the complaints are coming in then, don't we?
Absolutely. Well, anyway, thanks everybody, and see you next week.
This is the Fezcast.